You keep telling yourself you can't focus anymore, but that's not entirely true. Because somehow, you can watch short videos for an hour without noticing time pass. You can read comment threads you'll never remember. You can open your phone for one notification and emerge 20 minutes later wondering what happened. So maybe the problem isn't that you can't focus. Maybe the problem is that something else has learned how to focus you. And that's a very different problem. Think about the last time you sat down to do something important. Maybe it was work. Maybe studying. Maybe a project you've been putting off for weeks. You opened the laptop, got comfortable, took a breath, and then your brain started negotiating. Check your messages first. Look something up. Open another tab. Quick break. One video. One scroll. One notification. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that felt dangerous. Just tiny interruptions. Tiny enough that you barely noticed them. But the strange part is, by the time you returned to the thing that mattered, something had changed. Your attention felt weaker. Your motivation felt lower. Your mind felt noisy. And suddenly the task seemed heavier than it did 10 minutes ago. Most people think this means they're lazy, undisciplined, unmotivated. But here's what nobody realizes. Your attention is being trained every day, whether you mean to train it or not. Every time you switch tasks, every time you interrupt yourself, every time you reach for your phone because a moment feels slightly uncomfortable, you're practicing distraction. And practice has consequences. Imagine trying to build muscle while constantly stopping every few seconds. One push-up, walk away, come back. One push-up, walk away again. Sounds ridiculous, but mentally, millions of people live exactly like that. They spend entire days switching between emails, notifications, social media, texts, videos, music, tabs, conversations, and unfinished thoughts. Then wonder why deep focus feels impossible. At first, this feels harmless. After all, everybody multitasks now. Everybody's busy, everybody's connected, everybody's available. But here's where things start falling apart. Your brain doesn't experience multitasking the way you think it does. Most of the time, you're not doing multiple things at once. You're rapidly switching, back and forth, again and again and again. Each switch has a cost, a tiny cost, an invisible cost. But invisible doesn't mean free. And this changes everything, because the modern world rewards attention capture, not attention protection. Thousands of companies wake up every morning trying to answer one question. How do we keep people looking? How do we keep them scrolling? How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them coming back? Your attention isn't accidentally being interrupted. It's being competed for, aggressively, relentlessly, every second of every day. And if that sounds dramatic, look at your screen time. Look at how often your hand reaches for your phone without permission. Look at how many tabs are open right now. Look at how often silence feels uncomfortable. You don't notice it immediately. Because distraction doesn't feel like danger. It feels like relief. Bored? Scroll. Anxious? Check something. Stressed? Open an app? Confused? Watch another video? Need a break? Reach for stimulation. The pattern becomes automatic. And that's when the real problem begins. Because every time you escape discomfort, you weaken your ability to sit with it. Every time you avoid boredom, you reduce your tolerance for concentration. Every time you interrupt yourself, you teach your brain that focus is optional. And eventually something strange happens. You begin craving distraction even when you don't want it. You sit down to focus, and your mind starts looking for exits. Not because you're broken, because you've practiced leaving. For years. But wait until you realize why this happens. Because the greatest cost of distraction isn't lost productivity. It's something far more personal, something most people never connect to their lack of focus. And once you see it, you'll understand why focus has become one of the rarest abilities on Earth. And this is the part most people miss. Focus is not valuable because it helps you get more done. Focus is valuable because it changes who you become. Most people think focus is a productivity tool. It's not. It's an identity tool. Because every time you choose what deserves your attention, you're also choosing what kind of person you're becoming. Think about that. The person who reads for 20 minutes every day isn't only building knowledge. They're becoming someone who can stay present. The person who trains consistently isn't only building a stronger body. They're becoming someone who keeps promises to themselves. The person who sits with discomfort instead of escaping into endless stimulation isn't only building discipline, they're building trust in their own mind. And that changes everything. Because the real tragedy isn't being distracted. The real tragedy is no longer believing you can control your own attention. You see it everywhere. People start projects and abandon them, start routines and abandon them, start goals and abandon them. Not because they don't care, not because they're lazy, because somewhere along the way, they stop trusting themselves. They've broken so many small promises that every new promise feels suspicious. They tell themselves they'll wake up early. They don't. They tell themselves they'll stop scrolling. They don't. They tell themselves they'll focus for 1 hour. They don't. And eventually the mind starts keeping score. Not consciously. Quietly. In the background. And every broken promise becomes evidence. Evidence that maybe you're not the kind of person who follows through. But here's the truth. The evidence was never about your character. It was about your environment. Your attention has been under attack from thousands of tiny forces working against you. Algorithms, notifications, infinite feeds, constant interruptions. And all of it created one dangerous illusion, that your inability to focus means something is wrong with you. It doesn't. But continuing to surrender your attention does have consequences. Because whatever owns your attention eventually owns your life. Not overnight. Gradually. The same way water shapes stone. The same way habits shape identity. The same way years pass before you realize how much has changed. And this is where the story turns. Because you don't need perfect discipline. You don't need a new personality. You don't need some magical morning routine. You need fewer battles. You need fewer distractions. You need fewer escape routes. You need to make focus easier than distraction. That's it. A surprisingly simple shift. Not easy, but simple. Because every time you create an environment that supports attention, your brain starts remembering something. It remembers what deep engagement feels like, what presence feels like, what clarity feels like. And once you experience that again, mindless distraction starts feeling different, not exciting, not rewarding, expensive. You begin noticing the cost, the fractured thoughts, the mental exhaustion, the constant feeling of being busy without moving forward, and suddenly, focus stops feeling like a sacrifice. It feels like freedom. The freedom to finish, the freedom to think, the freedom to stay with something long enough to discover what you're actually capable of. And maybe that's the deepest realization here. Your future isn't being built by the biggest decisions you'll ever make. It's being built by whatever repeatedly captures your attention. Every scroll, every click, every distraction, every moment of presence. They're all votes. Votes for the person you're becoming. The strange thing is, most people spend years trying to improve their lives without protecting the one thing improvement depends on: attention. Without it, nothing sticks. Not knowledge, not habits, not goals, not growth. Everything begins there, and everything falls apart there too. So the next time you reach for your phone without thinking, pause for a second, not out of guilt, out of curiosity. Ask yourself one question. Who chose this? Was it you, or was it something choosing for you? Because that tiny moment of awareness, that tiny interruption, might be where your attention starts coming back. And when your attention comes back, so does your life, not all at once. Gradually, one focused moment at a time, one intentional choice at a time, one reclaimed piece of attention at a time, until one day you realize something that used to feel impossible. The noise is still there, The distractions still exist, but they no longer own you. And if this felt a little too real, maybe that's the part you shouldn't ignore.